Well, welcome to Let Us Reason Together. We are so glad that you've joined us this Monday morning, December 7th. I am Sandi Craig, and I am the host of this show, I am the host that fills in on this show because my husband, John Craig, is actually the host of this show, but he's out again today. So you get me. Well, aren't you clapping for that? I don't know. Maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. Of course, I like it when we're together. Well, who am I? My husband and I pastor a congregation here in Amarillo, Texas called Life of Worship. And we have our services. Our main services are at 5 p.m. on Shabbat, but we have our Torah study at 2 p.m. on Shabbat. Both of those times are central. Our 2 p.m. Torah study is on Zoom, and you can always email me and say, I want to be a part. You can do that. But our 5 p.m. services are on YouTube Live, and join us that way. We would love to have you. We have the chat open, and we like to hear what you have to say, and that you're a part of us, and we love to have you there. Anyway, I do a few other things as well as my husband. We have Monday morning War Room prayers, which just finished, by the way, as well as Tuesday evening Walking in Spirit and Truth at 8 p.m. Central. And then I, along with my co-host and others, do the next chapter, which is this time slot on Thursday mornings. All of those shows are good, but let me remind you, the Messianic Lamb Network, Video Network, hey, there's a show for you covering every topic you can think of, and your days will be uplifted if you just tune in all day. There is such a plethora. There are so many shows to give you information to learn from, to encourage you, to pray for you. I can just go on and on. Come and take a look at our page and be a part of this family at the Messianic Lamb Network. Anyway, well, since I said that over and over, I'm going to bring in the founder, the visionary, my co-host today, and so many other things. He wears all sorts of hats, the creative director, and so much more, Mr. Mark David Smith.
Oh, couldn't you come up with 42 more different adjectives there? By the way, you wanted people clapping, so.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I am so glad that you are with me today.
Alone together. We're alone together.
But we've done this before,
yeah.
So we're good at it. We can handle it.
You know, I was just thinking the other day that back when we used to do all those games on Only Visiting This Planet, that I'm real sure every week when I made up those games and all the questions and things that we would do, I have every one of those shows documented, in on the computer. We have the broadcast, but I have all those games just sitting there. Those need to come out. We need to do those again and, open that up, do it some way, have some way to play those games again with somebody, with anybody, whatever.
I am 100% in agreement. I think I've said that before.
Yeah.
They're so much fun, and they get people out of their rut. We get so focused in accomplishing this task and the next task and the work of our day, and the work can be overwhelming and long, but to stop and have a little bit of laughter and a little bit of fun in the middle of your day or at the beginning or however it may be, laughter is good medicine. So,
well, the problem is getting people to come on and play the games.
Because they don't want to be embarrassed in case they get the wrong answers.
Well, see, then it kind of messes things up for us to, to be able to have the show or have the thing to do. And I don't want to do the same people every week.
I thought of a game that you could create with around a theme, whether we can give the wrong answer. Well, you do that with Torah, not Torah. But even something else where the wrong answer maybe is the right answer. I don't know. We'll have to brainstorm that one.
Okay. Well, it's fun coming up with games and putting them together. It takes time. It really does. It takes time, but We just have to implement them from time to time here and there. I mean, we could do them with Eddie and Tammy on this show. We could slip one in every once in a while. We could do it with Joe and Sherry on next chapter and just slip one in, every once in a while.
Sounds good to me.
I wouldn't want to do it without you. So those are really the only two that we could do.
I think it sounds good. I think we need to plan something soon.
Okay.
All right. Good. Well, you know what? We are changing things up because why can we? Because I'm the host today and I can do whatever I want. So instead of a whole bunch of other stuff, we're actually going to start with some news, maybe some controversial news. And I'd like to hear your perspective of it because I'm torn in between a couple different things on this news article. But what is it? Well, you're going to have to just wait and then you'll find out what this news article is about. All right. What am I going to talk about today? Marijuana. Yeah, we're taking a break from COVID and we're taking a break from the election and talking about something a little. Like the sound effects there. Anyway, we're talking about something a little less controversial.
Bring it on, Sandy. Come on. Let's talk about it.
The House passes a landmark bill decriminalizing marijuana at a federal level. Do you agree or disagree? This is from Douglas Braff, December 4th, 2020. The U.S. House of Representatives on Friday voted to pass a historic bill that would decriminalize marijuana use at the federal level if the U.S. Senate and the president approve it too. The legislation, known as the MORE Act, comes off the heels of the 2020 U.S. elections, which saw numerous states legalize the recreational and medicinal use of marijuana through the ballot referendums, bringing the total number of states that have legalized recreational use to 15, plus the District of Columbia. Additionally, 36 states and DC have so far legalized the medicinal use of marijuana. And the House voted 228 to 164, basically up on party lines. And there were five Republicans who voted in favor and 6 Democrats who did oppose pot legalization on that level. And what's more, say that Representative Matt Gaetz, who's a Republican from Florida, and he has been an ally of President Trump and the only GOP co-sponsor of the MORE Act, was encouraging his fellow Republicans to vote for the bill. He said that while he believes the act was flawed, he argued that the war on drugs has failed and has caused disproportionate mass incarceration of racial minorities, among other significant issues. The MORE Act is flawed, he said. It uses cannabis policy to do a great deal of social engineering to create new taxes and new programs and the redistribution of assets, Gaetz said at the opening of his almost 4-minute remarks. But I'm here as the only Republican co-sponsor of the MORE Act, and I'm voting for it because the federal government has lied to the people. Oh, think about that. Of this country about marijuana for generations. He continued, passion filling his voice. We have seen a generation, particularly of Black and brown youth, locked up for offenses that should not have resulted in any incarceration whatsoever. Historically, this whole thing represents a turning point for the Republican Party. Most likely, this could be a reflective of the GOP beginning to adapt to a dramatically changing attitude the majority of Americans hold towards marijuana use in general. So there's a little more on the article. Let's see. I did. I'll include the link in the chat so you guys can look at it yourself if you would like to. But there we go. Should we decriminalize pot? Should we not? What are the benefits? What are the disadvantages? I know you guys are tired of talking about COVID and the election. So, hey, this is the way we get a break. So we get to talk about something that's also controversial. But that's what this show's about. We're reasoning together. So come and reason with us right now. So Mark, come in and talk to me. What do you think? What do you think? You can tell, you don't have to go directly on this issue. You can just talk pot. And silence fills the air.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, I just have to be really careful about what I say or my opinion on this type of thing. I just do. I go either way. And well, really, I just have to go against it to stay politically correct. So, but I'm going to hem-haw around the whole thing because I don't know where else to go with it. Let's bring COVID into it. If you're smoking, unless, as George Thorogood would say, when I drink alone. Unless you smoke and smoke alone, you're good. But most people, marijuana is a social drug. So you're going to do it with other people, meaning that it's indifferent than drinking a glass of alcohol, which you don't pass around. Most anything done with marijuana is passed around, whether it's a pipe or a joint or whatever you do, it's all passed around. I really don't want to hear what John Craig has to say about it. So,
he just came back in. He was on his way to work, and he's back.
Bye. No, I'm sorry. I'm just giving you. No, I'm giving you a real hard time. But you see what I'm saying is that it's a social drug.
Honestly,
it's a social drug. So
I don't really know about it. So
well,
I've never done it.
Whatever.
No, seriously, I don't.
Okay, well, I'm telling you, it's a social drug. It's unlike what I said. George Thorogood did a song called "When I Drink Alone." With pot, I don't know, you might want to catch a buzz by yourself or whatever, and I'm sure people do. But I have to talk in generalities as though I know, but I don't know. I have read somewhere. No. Once again, it's a social drug. So it brings COVID into the whole situation, in that when you're doing pot, indifferent than alcohol is never passed around. You don't just mix something up, though people do drink out of a pitcher or whatever, it's rarely passed around. Unlike a joint or a pipe or whatever, which people smoke off of, is passed around in a social situation. So you're going to, it doesn't make any difference, COVID or the flu or a cold sore, just to be graphic here. Anything social where you're passing it around and touching yourself and touching somebody else, you're bound to catch something else. So that should be enough right there to keep you from not doing it, whether you're opposed to it or not. But when it comes to legal legislation, federal legal legislation to it, I'm just going to put generalities out there. It's not indifferent than alcohol. The high from it and what happens with it with the person is not indifferent than alcohol, and how you react to once you have partaken of it, it's not that different. So I'm not gonna say whether or not I am for it or against legalization of it. I'm just speaking from general facts.
Yeah, so, you don't need to say that one way or the other. What did you want to say?
Well, I gave that article to Sandi to bring up because it was totally different, like she said earlier. as opposed to the current events that are just completely captivating our attention and the headlines. And then they slip this thing in Congress. One of the big things that I'm looking at it as is that this one element has been used to incarcerate so many blacks and browns people,
Sure.
and that's how it says in the article, unfairly.
Yeah, I don't
Sure.
believe there should be incarceration for young people like that,
And so,
unless they're dealing with other things.
So we have a moral issue on one side in regards to the use of drugs, but you know what? We are in a society that's so full of pharmakia from legal and illegal sources, and some of those legal pharmaceuticals are sold illegally. I mean, it's just amazing that that's the way our culture is. And the marijuana that is cultivated today
it's not like the marijuana of yesteryear.
Been genetically modified. So along with any type of legalization, any type of drugs comes suicidal consequences. And as a sociologist, in a certain sense, because that's what my degree is in, I can see how that affects society and can affect society in so many multiple ways. In regards to the legalization of it, but it's affected in a lot of negative ways because of its the criminalization of it. So I think there's a pathway by which one can navigate through it, but because I just think that throwing, in particular, that's what Kamala Harris did in her district in San Francisco, is she used that to institutionally affect so many of the black people in the San Francisco area. I mean, she threw the book at them for just possession of marijuana, and even with the point of just recreational use, minimal amounts, and use that against people. And that's that type of thing to fill up the prison systems, because
instead of those like Kamala Harris, who should be in prison for other things.
So
you're talking about Vice President-elect Kamala Harris?
No, there's no Vice President-elect. I'm not even going to go there. No.
So
no.
But my point is that that it really comes down to this. We have these individual decisions that we have to make as in terms of what we put into our bodies and keeping our bodies a temple of Elohim. So, but on the other side of it, we have seen so much abuse and misuse in the legal systems because of our own personal circumstances. I think there needs to be a major course correction in the laws, and that they shouldn't use that as punitive actions against people to throw them into that, what do we call it? The prison industrial system.
The prison economic boost for somebody.
It is a prison industrial system, and the judges are involved, the DA's involved.
They're all bought.
They have private prisons that have to have a certain amount of capacity by contract, and so they have to fill them up. And
so they fill them not with criminals, but stuff like this, and it's wrong.
Yeah. So
I agree.
So I think it's a measure that we can see the bad side of it, and we can see benefits of it. But it just really tells us that the problem is because there's been a problem all along with the judicial system, and it's been open for great abuses like this.
Now, I do want to say, based on all of that, I am very against. I know you said marijuana smoking is just like drinking, but I will tell you this. I want to talk about kids smoking pot and what happens to them. But I also want to talk to you about those that we've dealt with in our congregation. Even them and their use of pot, they can't get away from it. And no matter how much they try, they've even said, and I've heard not only from them, but from others too, that the pot that the people use today is not like the pot they used yesterday, because it's full of a whole bunch more stuff. And I've seen it destroy lives and livelihoods because they try to get over pot marriages. They try to stop, and they stop for a little bit, and it's so addictive for them. They go back, they keep going back, and it's destroying everything. But then also I want to look at, now I do know there's medicinal uses of pot, and maybe it's okay for some, I don't know, but there's also effects on young people if they smoke it. I know traditionally the brain itself is damaged, and it's irreversible damage depending on how much you smoke. But a kid who starts using it, their
development stops at the point that they start using it.
Where they start really using it. Right now we have 3.1 million adolescents 12 to 17 have used marijuana in the past year. 11.8 million young adults 18 to 25. 14% of 8th graders have used it in their lifetime. 33 of 10th, 44 of 12th graders. 22% of 12th graders have used marijuana in the past month. 6% of 12th graders use it daily. And when a person uses marijuana, that principal psychoactive chemical called tetrahydrocannabinol, THC,
there you go,
passes through the lungs into the bloodstream, and the blood carries the THC to the brain, and where it acts specific on some receptors, and they're found predominantly in the area of the brain. And they have, of course, it affects your concentration, your thinking, your sensory, your time perception, your pleasure, their memory, your coordination. And overactivation of these areas by THC causes a high that people feel free, and they, but marijuana, it can impair functions like attention and memory and learning. And these effects can last if with small usage up to several days beyond the time of the actual high, but with regular usage, it is permanent. And for teenagers, at least, the teenage brain is not yet fully mature until the mid-20s. So, and the consequent side of the teenage brain is not done until at least 25. And there's other effects on the developing brain, including interference with neurotransmitters and abnormal brain shape and structure volume. Studies show that it has reduced cognitive function of teens, and found that teens who regularly use marijuana lowered their IQ by at least 5.8 points. And it also has an effect on their cognitive this study says they found that marijuana has a more negative impact on a teenager's cognitive development than alcohol. Other long-term usages of pot for teenagers includes respiratory issues, increased chance of lung cancer and heart attack, problems with child developing after pregnancy, and other areas. So, and there's just a lot. So, and here's another thing. It's when you do look at the studies, they say the earlier you become a stoner, or, I'm talking about a lot of usage, the more you have to worry. And you're going to suffer from memory loss, illness, breathing problems, maybe cancer, and lower IQ. There's just effects. There are effects. And then you look at society, and I notice the teenagers that we've had around that I've dealt with, whether they're in life of worship or not in life of worship, they have this tendency to not be as productive as other members of people, of other members of their peers. I'll just put it that way. And so I'm not saying that it's terrible and you shouldn't do it, but I do think that kids need to stay away from it. And I've heard that in Colorado now, where it was first legalized, that the work ethic and a whole bunch of other stuff has gone
south.
So
there's another side of the story, and it's being brought up here in the chat room, and it has to do with CBD and also hemp oil.
And that's good stuff.
And so those things are the positive sides of the marijuana plant, but they remove the THC element out of it, because it's the THC in and of itself that causes the brain transformations and that type of thing. So many people get the benefit when it's properly been processed and that's been removed. And it helps with all sorts of different things.
It does. Pain. There's just all sorts of things that it helps with.
But some really good points, and
so I'm torn.
That's exactly right. And that's why we really have to talk about it, because it's going to affect our congregations in the faith-based communities. It's going to affect our congregations, and it's not just going to be the teenagers. It's going to be the adults, and then it's going to affect ministry, and it's going to affect
how hard is it to try to pull some of our guys that have been at Life of Worship out of the pot smoking lifestyle? How hard?
Yep. And then also,
how hard? Answer that question.
It is extremely difficult. And then to find people, you get people that have been on it, to find a motivation. It really removes the motivation of people to do anything. And so all of a sudden now we're just hurting people as opposed to getting people involved.
But by the same token, I do not think that you should be going to jail or prison for those sorts of things. I think that is wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's way wrong. And so that's why I said I'm torn on it. I see good, I see bad. From the ministry perspective, well, and it's still good and bad, because you minister to those people who've been incarcerated for no reason whatsoever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they're subject to all sorts of losses of civil liberties. And
they're slaves.
And then when they get out, then they're targeted to be put back in for some type of parole violation. And that's
or drug usage.
Yeah. It's this whole another thing. So yeah, it's a very complicated issue. We've got to understand there's so many different sides of it. And we also know that it is one of the things that has caused such really violence and death on the streets because of the drug industry, the illegal drug industry, and the street industry that goes on with that. So that's another side of it that maybe could have been circumvented had it never been made illegal. So
we sort of stand on both sides. Anyway. Okay, everybody's silent now.
But anyway, it's a good article. It's a good topic for discussion
that you brought forth and you sent to me.
And it has nothing to do with the election or
okay
Civil War or
okay. All right.
Or
why?
Okay. I'm going to give you the other side of the coin. All right. You got to be open to this. All right. Everything you guys just talked about is from what you read of studies. Right?
No, and what we've seen in real life.
Yeah, I know, from in your congregation. Yeah. Number one thing, and I'm going to say this across the board for about everything, and you have to agree, it comes down to self-control.
That's true. That's true.
It really does. I mean, if you're talking about teenagers, it comes down to their parents teaching them self-control.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all there is to it. My daughter drinks alcohol. Okay. She's a grown woman, got 2 kids. You guys know my daughter. She drinks alcohol, but she has self-control. That's all there is to it. She's not an alcoholic. And I know this because I've spent time with her over a period of time. I know she's not an alcoholic. I know the family is, and I know her husband, the whole thing. And alcoholics come from not having self-control is what it comes down to. The drug, no matter what it is, oxycodone and everything else, which is a much huger problem in this country. As a matter of fact, there is a bill being, I think, even passed right now to completely stop the production of oxycodone, because of how huge of it is being addicted to. But once again, I have, I'll just show you. I have it, and that's not it. One of these has 1 oxycodone in there. Okay. From when I had kidney stone. I still have 1 left. That's because I don't get addicted to it. I have self-control. All right. It's really what it boils down to. Each individual person has to have self-control. And when it comes down to that, let me just give you some background. I smoked my first joint when I was 16. And after smoking my first joint, I smoked it whenever I could get a hold of it. I smoked pot a lot in high school and after that until I found the Lord and didn't smoke anymore. Okay. I'm telling you, it has to do with self-control. Do you guys find me not sharp in my wit?
No. And we're not saying that. But I also
no, you kind of are.
No, because I also wait, Mark. I also said the pot of today is different.
I also got straight A's in high school, and I smoked pot all the time. So, and I know
what I said.
What
I said, the pot that people are smoking today.
I understand that. I understand it's different, but let me tell you what, I can run you through some pot that matches up to what they smoke today. I don't smoke it today, so I can't really say that. But back then, we had some pretty hairy pot to smoke. Okay, but it's not. Okay, I'm not going to argue that point with you. I'm just telling you it comes down to self-control. When it comes down to what you're talking about, the criminalization issue, my biggest deal on that has to do with, of course, you don't want to throw somebody in jail just for smoking pot. That shouldn't be right. But whenever, for any substance that is not in the control of the government or whatever like that, when you're selling something and making thousands of dollars, not just to say a lot of them are making millions of dollars and never paying taxes on it, that's a different story. The what they've done by legalizing the money that comes in from the taxes of that have solved many problems in many states. Okay, that's my study on it, what I've heard from it. My biggest deal is those that have been put in jail for crimes that has to do with pot, but now are legalizing pot and they're still in jail. How can you let somebody be in jail for a crime that isn't even a crime anymore?
I agree.
They should let those people out. But they don't. That's an issue with me. So I'm just saying, there's two sides of the coin, and there's some good stuff that has to do with the CBD and there are people that have glaucoma that it's the THC in the that helps the glaucoma. The THC does help a lot of issues. Tammy wrote something about PTSD. There's a lot of things like that help people come around. And I can see it, having done it myself. I don't like alcohol. I don't like the taste of it. I don't want to drink alcohol, but I drink alcohol on an extremely limited basis because I have self-control. First of all, I don't like it. I don't like the buzz from it. I don't like, but you guys have been around me when I drink alcohol, right?
Yep.
I'm a different person. To me, seriously, take the self-control issue out of it. There is no difference between drinking alcohol and smoking pot. There is no difference. I have done it. I've been there. I've grown through it. I know the difference between the two. And if I were given a choice today of doing it, I'll say it straight out. You can guys do whatever you want to do about me or quit or whatever. I mean, I'm talking to everybody else out there. I would choose marijuana over alcohol any day, simply because the difference between whatever you're using it for is a world of difference, yet it does the same thing to your senses and what you do and how things are. Take it from somebody that's experienced it over the studies that are out there, because
Well,
those studies can be skewed too.
I'm just gonna use my brother. My brother started smoking pot about 13. He stopped smoking pot about 43 or 44 or 45. And he always he was really big. He told my son, he said, "Do not do it. Pot is a gateway." And he says, because I started smoking pot,
Self-control.
I used every drug there was and alcohol.
So
And my brother thinks the opposite. He thinks alcohol is much less effective on him than pot. But I'm just giving you, I'm not talking from some study. I'm also talking personally. My brother's life was destroyed because of what he calls his gateway, which was pot. And it went down the line with that.
it's not always true with everybody.
And it's not. And I'm not condemning anybody who does or doesn't. But my experience is that it has hurt a lot of lives. And so is alcohol. Both of them have. But when I was speaking, I was specifically speaking to the teenagers that I know today that are dealing with pot issues, and almost without fail, all of them have gone on. All of the teenagers have gone on to use something else as well.
Okay, let me address that. Okay, if you're open enough to do something because you want that high, you want that difference than being normal everyday how you feel,
The escape.
you're going to want to do whatever's out there. Nobody wants to do just pot. A gateway, I disagree. I so disagree, because I personally know people that did other drugs before they ever did pot. Pot was just something that was along with it. It's a drug. It's a drug the same as cocaine, speed, all that kind of stuff. If you want to do it, you're going to do it. It's not in my life and what I've seen in others' lives. There is no such thing as a gateway. It's simply the thought process of, this is what I want to do. Period. That's the way it works. Self-control. I know people in my life, even back when I was growing up, that had a lot of self-control. There's times when I had it, times when I didn't have it. But there's people that I knew that had a lot of self-control that it's like, yeah, I could take it or leave it or do it or whatever like that. And hey, I respected those people. I mean, those were my peers. Those were people around me. It really 100% comes down to self-control. It comes down to what you want in your life. It comes down to how you want your body to feel. If I tried cocaine before I ever did pot, I'd probably go on to do cocaine because it was available. Period. Had nothing to do with, oh, I smoked a joint. Oh, now I really want to go even more. I want to do heroin now. That's the biggest bunch of BS I ever heard in my life. It doesn't work that way. It just doesn't work. It's all up here. It's all up here. And I'm speaking from my experience, from going through it as long as I did. I get what your brother's saying, but I'd ask your brother, did you also want to do those other drugs outside of pot? If you'd never been pot, would you have also wanted the feeling from the other drugs? Across the board, you're going to find everybody's going to say, yes, I would have liked to have tried that even if pot wasn't available. So gateway, I don't buy that. Never have bought it in my entire life. I disagree. And that's totally from experience. Not only me and other people. Comes down to self-control. It really does.
I think, Mark, you're making some really valid points. What I think in terms of where the issue with pot is probably in most communities, it was probably the most readily available outside of alcohol. And that's probably why it was used. But it does come down to, we've all been created with a God-shaped vacuum within us. And we look for things to fill it. And whether one had availability to pot or availability to something else, outside of a relationship with Yeshua, there's people are going to try to stuff that vacuum and try to find some type of escape or fulfillment or something that's going to help them out, or try to, ease really what we look at in terms of the world. The life isn't a bed of roses. It's not easy. And people, whether they have money or without money, it's, people are always looking for just something to escape from. And some people use eating as an escape. Some people, it's one addiction or another. If it's there and availability and opportunity is there, people are going to use it. That's where the concern of the legalization is, of course, is making it more readily available. Will it cause social issues? Or look at the states that are there. Do they have issues? Are the people, I'd also, Sandi brought up a good point. What's it do in terms of your ability to think about consequences that's not fully developed until about age 25 to 27?
Yep.
Then are these Antifa and Black Lives Matter people on the streets? What's their usage of pot,
or alcohol,
or any other type of drug? Is it hindering their ability to see the consequences of their actions? Not only the immediate consequences, but long-term effect. If they got their way and we brought in full-blown communism, maybe in a few years, if they don't see what the result would be, it's because they can't see the consequences of their actions. But that's a whole nother realm of it. But here's the other side of it is one's potato chip bill goes way high with pot usage.
Whatever.
It's a budget thing.
To me, this is a very serious subject. But, and I think I know people's view on this is really rarely based on experience. Non-experience. Rarely, well, either way. It's just.
We are talking from experience in that of just the people.
I get it.
It's really dealing with the vices of society that we in the ministry deal with people and stuff. But it's worth bringing up, and it's worth the topic, because we really have to have a game plan to kind of work through it. But what you said too, Mark, was this, and that is the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And I tell you what, that's what it really boils down to. And what spirit do we want to be filled with? What's the fruit of that relationship that we really want? Because without it comes many heartaches. And so
anyway. Let me give you one last word here as just an example. Okay. Let's just say first of all, the question is, why does a person drink alcohol? Period. You don't have to drink alcohol. You absolutely do not have to. It's not in normal everyday consumption of food or drink. It's not there. You purposely buy alcohol and drink it. First of all, think about, why do you drink that alcohol, especially whether it's a beer, whether it's a drink, tequila, or a mixed drink, or shots, or whatever. First of all, think about that. What if there was no alcohol and only pot, and you knew pot had the same effects as the alcohol did? Would you smoke the pot? That's my question. Hypothetical. I'm not asking you guys to answer it. I don't know what you're doing, Sandi, but I'm trying to get my point across here. You see what I'm saying? Were you searching that out or something? I don't know.
No, I wasn't.
Okay. But you see what I'm saying is it has to do with, why are you drinking it or smoking it in the first place? It really comes down to that. And that's where your self-control comes in. Mm-hmm. If I have a desire to drink it for this reason, will I also have exactly the same desire to smoke it for the same reason? And that's the point I was getting at is I don't like alcohol. I don't like the taste of it. I don't like any part of it. And I don't like the effects from it. But I never had a problem with pot, ever, for any reason. So,
yeah. Well, cool. Well, it was a good discussion. I'm glad that, Sandy, you brought the article in. I was on my way to work. I really need to get going, but really good discussion. A lot of good things said, a lot of things to be considered. And it's not an easy answer, but I guess in one sense, it's not an easy answer when we're dealing with the justice system. There's one side of it, but really when we're looking at anything that we're doing in our lives, that's where we always have to balance that against the word. And that's where the fruit of the Spirit does bring us the self-control, but it also brings the joy and the satisfaction in life that these other substances can be it can turn into something that of destruction. So we just really have to watch it. That's why we have the word to guide us.
Yep.
And
it's who you run around with too.
Yeah, it's true.
It really does. It's who you hang out with,
mm-hmm.
is your peer pressure, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and I would say even like in the case of Sandy's brother, he wasn't doing it alone. He was doing it with friends where they're encouraging them all to do it. Maybe there was a bad seed in the group that encouraged the group to do it. However it works out, they always fall to the lowest common denominator and end up, and depending on the personality, depending on the person's makeup, and the person's what's been put into them up to that point in time, and as they've matured, is to determine what decisions they're going to make in life. So,
very true.
Which can lead to a battle with alcoholism and drug abuse, or it can be something that, well, it was one of those things and experiments of life, and we learn from it, and we go on, and we become better because of it, or
train up
because of it, but out of it can become better.
Train up your child in the way they should go.
Exactly. All right. Well, y'all, I'm going to step out so I can get to work, but blessings and shalom. We'll see y'all next time.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening to this news portion. Lasted a little longer, but it was a good discussion. But next up is the Torah portion. Stay tuned.
Be nice if I was there.
Torah, Torah, Torah. Torah, Torah, Torah. Torah, Torah, Torah. Torah, Torah, Torah.
Well, hello there. Myself, I didn't think I was up here because Sandy was here. And so I'm not teaching the Torah portion. And now she's gone. So I'm not teaching the Torah portion because I don't teach the Torah portion. So I'm not even going to carry on. So anyway, let's see if Sandy comes back because I'm not even doing this. So let me see what's going on here. I hate for this to happen, but hey, everybody, let me call Sandy and find out what's going on and see if she's coming in. Jason, Sandy, she's on my list here. Oh, there she goes.
Okay, so the Torah portion this week. That's what y'all are trying to hear, right? And then something happened and I'm not there. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about a family affair. Yeah, I wanted to talk about why Tamar is considered righteous for sleeping with her father-in-law. Have you ever thought of that? Why would that happen? Why would that be so? Well, let's talk about it for a minute. When we're looking at the Levirate marriage, the type of marriage was in the ancient Near East. The author of Genesis didn't feel the need to explain certain things because it's the way things worked in that society, and they assumed, the writer assumed you would know that, but we don't know that information today. And the law is very detailed in the book of Deuteronomy, where it says that if brothers dwell together and one dies without having produced a male heir, then the brother shall take his widow as wife and have sexual intercourse with her and produce a male heir. But was the purpose, many of us say, well, the purpose was for the name to continue, but was it really? Let's look at it. So is it to raise up the name of the deceased so that they're not blotted out in Israel? Well, let's look at some examples. Let's look at some different things and see if that whole thing sort of holds true, that thread holds true throughout. Because let's look at, there's not a lot of mention except Deuteronomy of anyone other than the brothers performing this duty. Yet the book of Ruth, we see a distant relative who performs this duty. And in fact, in the ancient Near East, the law codes, they assumed a basic understanding that the law and thus of the codes, and explained how to deal with this situation. According to Hittite law number 193, it's actually the father who's supposed to be the one who impregnates the widow. Now remember, that's Hittite, that's not Torah, but the father impregnates the widow if he is dead, and et cetera, et cetera. But regardless of where the law came from, that part of the law, when the brothers didn't perform their duty, it was still when Tamar's husband's brothers didn't perform the duty, what she did, sleeping with her father-in-law, is still considered righteous. So let's look at it. Let's look at it a little bit more deeply. Judah tells Onan to raise up a seed for your brother, okay, which is linked to Deuteronomy 25. And then in this case, the law was being carried out. Judah, Tamar, Boaz, and Ruth. We look at that. Did the relatives of Ruth, did their names really continue in the line? Is it really to raise up their name? We don't see that. We don't see that. We don't see it with Judah and Tamar. The genealogies really completely forget their names of the deceased brothers when a child is conceived. It's really not a big deal. So to carry on their name doesn't actually seem to be the purpose of this act being performed, because we read the biological father to the lineage. We read that line and we see Ruth's line, and it's connected to a different place. So the law is not for the purpose of preserving the memory of the deceased. I would say, just looking at the examples, because that's not what we see the result of this act being carried out. In the book of Ruth, we discover the purpose for raising an heir for the name of the deceased. In chapter 4, Naomi must sell a piece of land which belonged to her husband, Elimelech. And so Boaz seeks to redeem the land. So why does this other kinsman refuse to perform his duty? Because the land would redeem through the purchase would not belong to him or any of his kids. So it took Boaz to come in and say, hey, I'll marry you. I'll redeem the land, because even though I'm marrying you, the land isn't going to come to me. It's going to go to your son, and it's going to stay in that line. And so oftentimes, especially in this situation, nobody wanted to be with Ruth because they wanted the land for themselves. They didn't want to have to give it to the kid. So there's a motivation there, a heart motivation for sure. The land belonged to Elimelech's family, and it would have been given to his sons as an inheritance. And so by this act, the land continues to stay in the family. The land continues to stay in the family. By birthing a son who can inherit the state, the woman's social status also increased and brought honor and restored. And now she has someone to provide for her, someone who is a landowner. someone who can help her out. So we know in Deuteronomy 25, the laws state that if brothers dwell together, then the Levirate law applies. The phrase is similar to the law code of Hammurabi, which states when the brothers divide after the father has gone to his fate, and then goes on to describe the division of the inheritance of their father's estate. So thus, the law in the Torah must apply to the situation where the inheritance has not yet been given to the sons. It's about the inheritance. It's about the land. And when you understand the culture perspective, it puts light on the situation as to the reason why Onan's act of spilling the seed upon the ground was wicked. Why? Because it actually even warranted divine punishment, because he was stealing in a way. He was taking away what was supposed to happen. So Judah originally had 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. And when Judah died, his estate would have been split into 4 equal shares. And then as each son died, it got smaller and smaller. And the duty of the Levirate was performed with Tamar. Onan is back to only receiving 25% of the estate. He wants more than that. So he spills his seed, because he wants her to live life without an heir, so he gets a bigger piece of the pie. So it's all motivated by money and greed. So he devises a wicked plot, and he'll take the responsibility of the Levirate, so to take Tamar off the table, but he spills his seeds so that he doesn't ever have to share the spoils, so to speak. So Onan's sin he was practicing birth control. His sin was he was greedy, and he had a love of money. Actually, that's what motivates a lot of people this day. So greed is what connects this story to the rest of the Torah portion too. It's about greed. It's about status. It's about even the changing of garments. Tamar put on a widow's garment because it showed her legal status as a widow. When she was a prostitute, she demoralized herself, and she changed her garments again. Joseph's coat indicated his elevated status in the family. And what happened? His brother's attitude changed because it was about money, and the money he might receive, the inheritance that he might receive. So greed drove his brothers to toss him into a pit. And we see the same thing today. Greed and money and the love of money motivates so many things and atrocities that happen in our society today. And you can even go back to it. It motivates how things are used wrong with the news story we did. It's all about the greed. It's all about money. And that's what we see in this Torah portion today. So when you hear that Tamar, why is what Tamar did considered righteous? It's not about the name of her former husband. It's not about the name of her dead husband. It was about restoring honor to her and doing things the way Yah has called them to be done. So anyway, what do you have anything to say, Mark?
Oh, well, you went a different direction than when you started. And so I was I was following your original thing about marrying, within the family and that type of thing. And then you took off in a different direction, and I'm still thinking about the other one. So I was trying to think of, how to apply that to what I've been given as the Brit Hadashah, which is Matthew 1:18 through 25, which is the birth of the Messiah. And, thinking about how, it reads that when his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, yet Joseph, recognized what had actually happened with Mary and believed it, and it followed through, which, he had the choice, even though the Lord told him what to do and to go and be with Mary, but not have relations with her until, after the birth, I understand that most people wouldn't actually do that. they would take great offense at whatever it is. But I guess the fact that he heard from the Lord means that he did have a relationship with the Lord. And so following through with that. Now, of course, this is without the birth of the Messiah, which had nothing to do with whether or not Joseph married her or not or anything. It's just the Lord's plan was, I mean, without the birth of the Messiah, we don't have our belief system that we have. We'd still all be Jews, and believing the way of Torah and living out Torah and that type of thing without the Messiah, looking for a Messiah, I guess I should say. But my original thought was when you started talking about, the marrying of the brother and the name and all of that, my thought immediately goes to Romans 7, which starts off with Paul, talking about a woman whose husband has died. And so let me just go to Romans 7. Let's just start at verse 2. It says, for example, a married woman is bound by Torah to her husband while he is alive, but if the husband dies, she is released from the part of the Torah that deals with husbands. Therefore, while the husband is alive, she'll be called an adulteress if she marries another man. But if the husband dies, she is free from that part of the Torah. Now, we know this goes all in a different direction, and that's really talking about recognizing Torah and what parts of Torah work for different ways. And I think it really does apply to what you're talking about, in that you have to recognize Torah and the law behind Torah to even recognize what you're talking about in Tamar being righteous or not. You would have to recognize the laws of Torah along with whether or not she marries her brother or what direction you go from that. However, but I don't know how to look at it any differently based on, what you were talking about. So, and so that's where I would have gone with the Brit Hadashah, and that even if Joseph hadn't acted on what the Lord told him to do, she still would have had the Messiah, and it still would have worked. But the Lord needed a righteous family. The Lord needed the husband and the wife together to maintain everything that happened after that. But isn't it interesting that we don't see Joseph again? I mean, after the original story of the birth and taking him to Egypt and then bringing him back, we just don't even see Joseph in the story again, though it does, jump from that part of the story to 30 years later when the Messiah started his ministry. But anyway, can go all kinds of directions.
A couple things. Let me get two questions out so I can be sure I don't forget them. One, would Mary have been chosen if Joseph wasn't a righteous man and do what he did? And secondly, we don't hear about him, but we do know the fingerprints of him because Yeshua became a carpenter. Now we know carpenter is also, I'm not saying he wasn't a physical carpenter, but being a carpenter is also an idiom for a teacher of the Torah. But we know that he went into his father's profession, and therefore Joseph wasn't out of the picture immediately. We do know that Joseph did play a big part in Yeshua's life. So I find that very interesting when you think of it in that terms, because it's not like he just disappeared and he's gone. He was there, and he impacted Yeshua. And then for the other part of it, if Joseph wouldn't have been a righteous man, would Yah have chosen Mary? Because
that's exactly my same question that I had while you were saying that. Go ahead. I would think the same thing.
It takes a family. It's all about a family. Always. It's always been about a family. I don't think so. Because Mary and Joseph would be one. It's the 1-2-1 concept. Therefore, the one Mary was connected with had to be righteous himself and had to go along and had to understand the gravity of what was happening to Mary. Because even with Mr. and Mrs. Adam, or husband and wife, when you talk to, or let's go to Abraham and Sarah. I did a Torah portion on that. Maybe not here. Maybe it was at Life of Worship. But when they were speaking, they weren't just speaking to Abraham, when they were speaking to Sarah as well. And so in the choosing of Mary, was it also the choosing of Joseph?
Yeah, I agree with that question 100%. In that, and also they couldn't be married ahead of time, then it wouldn't be the virgin birth.
But in Hebrew, being betrothed is, you have to get a divorce once you're engaged.
I know.
So it's like you're married.
You're talking about the word Alma. Which is betrothed. Yeah, I get it. It all has to work together exactly the way it needs to work together. But so I don't want to even think about predestination, meaning that the Lord caused this to happen. He would have had to have found or known that through their choices, they got to this point. I don't know where to go with that. I don't know.
Well, I think it's a question everybody should just contemplate, study it out, research it yourself. As with everything, don't believe a word we say. Do your own study.
Please don't believe. Yeah, I agree.
Well, you guys, I think we've had a full show already this day, and I want to thank you guys for joining us here at Let Us Reason Together, the Monday edition, and John for popping in on his own show unexpectedly.
Especially after suggesting that topic and then leaving you to it. I'm glad he didn't leave us alone together with that topic. I'm glad he entered in with that because, and I apologize if I get a little bit too passionate about it, but I knew the second you said what you were going to do, I wasn't going to keep my mouth shut. Even though I said, should I keep my mouth shut on it? I knew I wasn't, and I'm glad you didn't have to be there by yourself. So.
Well, but I wouldn't have cared because it's not about, I don't even know that I disagree with you. It's something, but it's something that it's a topic of discussion. And so I'm not offended either way.
I hope not. I can't help, but I can help for the way I feel about it.
And,
you can't help.
We don't need to rehash what we've already
done. We know. But.
So anyway, well, you guys, thank you for joining us here on Let Us Reason Together, the Monday edition. We can't wait to see you the next time. And until then, my name is Sandi, and I say, and that's Mark, and we say, Shalom.
Ta-ta.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.